Hello, I'm Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times. It's Wednesday, December 31st, the end of 2014. A very quick year in review. The year was dominated by the red tide in Arkansas. In one fell swoop, Arkansas turned from what had once been a reflexively Democratic state to a wholly Republican state. Democrats raised more money than Republicans, and most of the races, particularly the big ones, they lost them all, generally falling behind 55 to 45 in nearly every race from top to the bottom of the ballot. I think that's a situation that's going to last for years to come. There was a glimmer of good news on the civil rights front, and that was when Chris Piazza last spring ruled that the bans on same-sex marriage in Arkansas were unconstitutional. But we end the year on a sad note. The Arkansas Supreme Court apparently will not rule by the end of the year on the appeal of that case. There's a lot of reports of internal bickering and perhaps some conniving by certain members of the Supreme Court to delay the ruling. There'll be new justices next year. The case may have to be re-argued. Justice delayed is justice denied. But I noted this morning on the blog something that had happened last night in Little Rock, just a social note. Went to a party at the Pleasant Valley Country Club, a wedding reception really for two young men who'd been married in New York and came home to visit friends and family in Arkansas. It was an utterly unremarkable event. All kinds of mainstream people, doctors, lawyers, teachers, friends, family. They were just celebrating the happy news of a young couple. Perhaps someday they can get married in Arkansas. Perhaps someday their marriage will be recorded in the state's largest newspaper when they are accorded marriage equality. But still we wait. In other news, Asa Hutchinson's day of reckoning nears. Interesting story out of Kansas this week. A court there has ruled that because of the big tax cuts that have forced big spending reductions in education, Kansas is not meeting the court's set standards on education funding adequacy. Arkansas, I think, will risk that same peril if we cut taxes too deeply. The money has to come from somewhere, and education is a big source of that in Arkansas. As you know, big tax cuts take effect in Arkansas tomorrow, $109 million worth. Asa Hutchinson wants to add $100 million more in income tax cuts on top of that, and still he hasn't said yet if he's going to support the continuation of the private option expansion of Medicaid under Obamacare. This produces $100 million for Arkansas. Everybody believes he's going to have to be for it, and what form he's going to be for it remains to be seen. One little hint came this week about the future of private option in Arkansas was with Asa Hutchinson's announcement yesterday that Greg Bledsoe, currently chair of emergency medicine at an Alabama medical school, will come home to Arkansas and be his Surgeon General. There's an interesting family connection. His mother, Cecile Bledsoe, is a Republican senator, a stalwart foe of private option. She went around the state successfully campaigning for Republican candidates who defeated Democrats who voted for the private option. Will hiring her son make her more favorable toward the private option? Will he be for the private option as Surgeon General, as a successor Joe Thompson was? These are questions we don't know. I have just written today that Greg Bledsoe brings one strong recommendation to his new office. He once fought for reinstitution of the mandatory helmet law for motorcycle riders in Arkansas following research that shows it just makes sense from a medical point of view to require helmets. So he brings that hot button issue back into the state. In other news, the KKK is back active again in Harrison. That's a town that just can't shake its racial past. It's now advertising KKK radio on a billboard in the city that's been leased for a year. News out of Politico yesterday identifies Ron Cameron, the Mount Ayr poultry magnate, Warren Stevens, the CEO of Stevens Inc., the big investment firm here, is among the top 21 givers to political campaigns in America in the last year. Together they gave $8 million exclusively to Republican candidates. Great news in the Ozarks yesterday. A grassroots citizens group was successful in beating back an effort by SWEPCO to build a $116 million high voltage power line across some scenic patch of the Ozarks between Benton County and Carroll County. A big victory for grassroots movement. It made people wonder if they could have gotten an earlier start, if the same thing couldn't have been done about that hog farm that now threatens the Buffalo River watershed. Finally, it is New Year's Eve. Please celebrate with champagne and don't point your gun in the air. You're an Arkie. Of course, you've got several guns at home. Don't fire them into the air. Those bullets have to come down somewhere, and I don't want it to be on my head. That's it for today, and for 2014, I'm Max Brantley.